You have never seen the real Great Pyramid. Pull up a chair. Let me tell you a story about the most famous building on the face of the earth, and the strange fact that you have never actually seen it. I know how that sounds. You have seen the photos 1,000 times. The Great Pyramid of Giza, rising out of the desert sand, that unmistakable shape against the blue Egyptian sky. You might even have stood at the foot of it yourself and felt how small a human being really is next to it. So how could I tell you that you have never seen it? Because the thing standing on that plateau today, the thing in all the photographs, is not the pyramid that was built. It is a wreck, a stripped, battered skeleton of the real thing. The Great Pyramid that the ancient Egyptians raised 4,500 years ago looked almost nothing like the rough brown mountain of stone we see now. And over the centuries, piece by piece, the real pyramid was taken apart, carried off, and quietly recycled into something else. Look closely at the top and you will see the first clue. Every other Great Pyramid in Egypt still comes to a reasonably pointed peak, but the Great Pyramid does not. Its summit is flat, wide and flat, as if someone reached down from the sky and sliced off the very top and left a platform big enough to throw a party on. Something is missing up there, a lot of something. So tonight, we are not going to ask the usual question, how was the Great Pyramid built? We are going to ask the question almost nobody asks. How was it unbuilt? What did the real pyramid look like? Where did its missing pieces go? And why is the top sheared flat? The answer is one of the great quiet scandals of history, and it ends with a brand new theory about the very last piece to fall. Come on, let's go have a look. Let us start with what the Great Pyramid actually looked like when it was finished, because this is where most people's picture of it is simply wrong. The rough, stepped, brown stone blocks you see today were never meant to be seen at all. They were only the core, the inner bulk of the structure. Over that core, the ancient builders laid a smooth outer skin made of a finer, brilliant white limestone, quarried across the river at a place called Tura. They cut these casing stones with astonishing precision, polished them, and fitted them together so tightly and so smoothly that the whole pyramid became one vast, gleaming, mirror-bright slope. Try to picture that for a moment. Not a brown staircase of a mountain, but a single, seamless, blinding white pyramid so polished that it caught the sun and threw it back across the desert. People say it would have shone like a beacon, visible for many miles, a flame of white fire on the edge of the world. And at the very top sat the final piece, the crown of the whole thing, a small pyramid-shaped capstone called a pyramidion, possibly covered in gold or a gold and silver blend, so that the summit would catch the first and last light of the sun like a spark. That was the real Great Pyramid, smooth, white, gleaming, crowned with a shining point, rising about 146 meters into the sky, which is around 480 feet. That is the building the Egyptians actually made. And today, almost every scrap of that is gone. The white skin, stripped away. The shining crown, vanished. What is left is the naked core, weathered and brown, standing about 30 feet shorter than the day it was finished. So where did it all go? Let us follow the missing pieces, starting at the very top with that shining crown. The capstone was the first to disappear, and it disappeared a very long time ago. We know this because of two visitors from the ancient world, a Greek writer named Diodorus, who came through in the 1st century before the Common Era, and a Roman writer named Pliny, who came about 100 years later. Both of them climbed up and described the summit of the Great Pyramid. And both of them describe not a point, but a flat platform on top. A small square space, just a couple of meters across. Sit with what that means. 2,000 years ago, when the rest of the pyramid was still wrapped in its perfect white skin, the very tip was already gone. The golden crown, The most precious and the most reachable trophy on the entire monument had already been pried off and carried away by someone, lost to history long before the Romans ever laid eyes on the place. We do not know exactly when, and we do not know by whom, but the shining point, the first thing the builders raised it for, was also the first thing humanity took back. For a while, that was the only real damage. The capstone, and maybe a course or two of stone beneath it, gone. The great white pyramid stood, headless but still gleaming, for thousands of years. And then came the event that turned the wonder of the world into a building supply yard. In the year 1303, a powerful earthquake struck the region around Cairo. It rattled the whole area, and it shook the Great Pyramid hard enough to loosen that beautiful, tight-fitting white skin. All across the faces of the pyramid, the polished casing stones cracked free of their ancient mortar and began to slide. And down in the city, the people of medieval Cairo looked out at that mountain of perfectly cut, perfectly polished white stone, now loosened and ready to fall. And they saw something the pharaohs never intended. They saw a quarry. So they went to work on it. This is the part that genuinely stuns people. Crews of masons climbed the Great Pyramid, fixed ropes and tackle to its sides, and began prying off the gleaming white casing stones one by one, lowering them down the slopes to the ground and hauling them away into the city. The most magnificent surface ever created by human hands was dismantled and carted off like stock from a warehouse, and those stones did not vanish. They were used. They went into the mosques, the walls, the gates, and the palaces of Cairo. The white skin of the Great Pyramid became the buildings of a medieval city. We are not guessing about this. A French traveler passing through in the year 1395 actually watched it happening. He described masons partway up the slope, using their gear to lever off the great cut stones of the facing and let them down to the bottom. He was watching the Great Pyramid being eaten in real time, and it kept going for centuries. As late as the early 1800s, a ruler of Egypt was still pulling stone from the Giza pyramids to build a grand new mosque in Cairo. So here is something extraordinary to carry with you. If you ever walk through the old heart of Cairo and you run your hand along the wall of an ancient mosque, there is a real chance you're touching the lost surface of the Great Pyramid. The wonder was not destroyed. It was redistributed. It is still out there, hiding in plain sight, built into a city. Let me pause here for a second, because I would honestly love your take on this one. Knowing all of that, here's my question for you. Egypt could, in theory, try to recase a face of the Great Pyramid to show the world that blinding white slope the way it once looked. So would you want that? Would you want them to restore its lost skin and let it shine again? Or do you think it should be left exactly as it is, scars and all, as an honest record of everything that happened to it? Tell me down in the comments. I read every one, and the debates you start are how I choose what we dig into next. Leave your answer and then stay with me, because we still have not solved the mystery of that flat top. So the capstone went in deep antiquity. The white casing went over the centuries that followed the earthquake, but neither of those fully explains the wide, flat platform we see at the summit today. To lose that much off the very top, you have to keep removing the rough core stones underneath, the big inner blocks. And that is a different kind of effort, because there is no shining white treasure in them. They are just heavy, ordinary stone. So why would anyone bother to haul those down from the highest, hardest to reach point on the whole structure? To answer that, we have to follow a centuries-long paper trail written by a strange and wonderful parade of people who climbed the Great Pyramid and tried to measure it. You see, ever since those Romans, travelers kept coming, kept climbing, and kept trying to record how tall it was and how big the platform on top had become. Around the year 1200, a brilliant Arab scholar named al-Baghdadi studied it with great care while the white casing was still on. Later, European explorers came with their ropes and their notebooks. In the year 1765, an Englishman named Davison made the most careful measurements anyone had managed yet. Climbing the pyramid and recording the height of the steps, work so good it would not be beaten for over 100 years, until a meticulous surveyor named Flinders Petrie finally came along in the 1800s. But here is the maddening problem with all of these accounts. They wildly disagree with each other. One visitor counts a certain number of steps, the next counts a different number, the next gives a different height again. For a long time, it looked like the pyramid was simply shrinking, losing layers steadily year after year. And that is exactly what most people assumed. A slow, random nibbling away at the top by careless visitors over the ages. Except it turns out, counting the steps of the Great Pyramid is genuinely treacherous. A French Egyptologist named Goyon pointed this out plainly. He noticed that every time he climbed, depending on which path he took up the face, he got a different count, because the layers of stone are not all the same height. And sometimes two smaller blocks stack up to equal one taller layer. So one climber sees one step where another sees two. Multiply that confusion across hundreds of years and dozens of nervous travelers clinging to a giant pyramid, and you get a pile of numbers that contradict each other and tell you almost nothing. For centuries, the true story of the summit was buried under bad arithmetic. And this is where a fascinating new piece of detective work comes in. And I want to be very clear and very honest with you about where it comes from. This is not my discovery, and it is not the settled view of mainstream Egyptology. It is the original research of an independent Egypt analyst who went back and tracked down the actual handwritten manuscripts of those old explorers, including Davison's own notes, and pieced the measurements back together properly for the first time. And what he found is striking. When you sort out the bad counts from the good ones, the top of the Great Pyramid does not look like it shrank slowly and randomly at all. Instead, the summit seems to have stayed about the same for a very long stretch, and then lost a big chunk of its height all at once in a single burst, right around the year 1798, the era of Napoleon's famous expedition to Egypt. In other words, the bulk of that flat platform we see today may have been created not by slow accident, but by one deliberate, coordinated act of demolition carried out in a matter of weeks. And the suspected motive is almost too perfect. By that time, the most profitable thing the local guides could do was not take tourists inside the pyramid, but take them up it, to the top, to enjoy the view. And a small, jagged, uneven summit is no good for that. But a wide, flat platform, now that is a place where you could set up chairs and tables and host a paying crowd, even a grand gathering high above the desert. So the theory goes that someone chasing tourist money organized a crew to knock the rough peak off the Great Pyramid and flatten it into a viewing terrace. They decapitated a wonder of the world to host tea parties. Now, I want to stress that last part is a theory. A careful, well-argued, genuinely compelling theory, built from real manuscripts, but a theory all the same, and not yet the official verdict of the field. So take it as exactly that, one researcher's fascinating case, and a reminder that even the most studied building on Earth can still surprise us. But whether that final act happened exactly that way or not, the larger truth of tonight does not change. And it is worth saying plainly. The Great Pyramid did not lose its top to aliens, or to a curse, or to some great cosmic mystery. It lost its top, and its gleaming skin, and its golden crown, to us, to ordinary human beings, to a looter chasing gold, to a city that needed stone, to guides chasing a prophet. The most permanent thing our species ever built has been quietly carried away, piece by piece, by the very species that built it, and that, in the end, is the part that should stay with you. We tend to think of the Great Pyramid as untouchable, eternal, the one human thing that will outlast everything. But it has been shrinking and fading and disappearing into other people's walls for thousands of years, right under our noses. And most of us never even noticed it was missing its skin and its crown. There are still real questions left open up there. We still do not know for certain who took that golden capstone, or exactly when. We still do not know for sure if that flat platform was made in one violent week or worn down over many. The graffiti carved at the summit by centuries of climbers has never even been fully read. The most famous monument in the world still has secrets sitting right on top of it, waiting. So the next time you see a photo of the Great Pyramid, look at that flat, wide summit, and remember, you are not looking at a finished monument. You are looking at a wound, and the missing pieces are still out there, scattered through an ancient city hiding in plain sight. If you want to keep finding the pieces of the past that hide in plain sight, the lost surfaces, the missing crowns, the secrets sitting right on top of the things we thought we knew, then subscribe and turn on the bell, because that is exactly what we do here. I will see you in the next one. Until then, stay curious.